The concept of found footage horror had been kicking around for a while. The general consensus is that Cannibal Holocaust was the first film to really toy with those ideas back in 1980.
The law of the jungle. Eat or be eaten. These film cans tell what happened to the Americans who journeyed into the Amazon to shoot a documentary.
However, as an established subgenre itself, found footage never really found its footing until the late 90s. Inevitably, everyone's minds are now conjuring up memories of men standing in corners and noses snotting all over the camera lens. It is true, the Blair Witch Project has survived the test of time and remains a constant mainstay in any discussion of the subgenre. But its spiritual sister movie, The Last Broadcast, released a year earlier, has become somewhat lost in the shaky cam shuffle. The Last Broadcast presents itself as an amateur true crime documentary, complete with dramatic freeze frames, audio stings, and a dour, emotionless narrator.
They were big news for a period of 1 year, and then, like so many things in today's fast-paced world, were forgotten.
In its opening manifesto, the purported director of this apparently true story states how the film shall take an investigative dive into a recent local murder case that he believes was not concluded in a satisfactory manner. The case at first appears to be relatively open and shut. 4 men entered the Pine Barrens in search of the Jersey Devil, and only 1 returned. The survivor was accused and ultimately issued 2 life sentences. The creator of the documentary begins with a fairly impartial mindset, but as he digs deeper into the found footage, he becomes more and more convinced that there is another truth hidden out there. I don't often watch true crime documentaries that have become oh so popular in recent years. They are more targeted at the type of people purchasing Ted Bundy bone dildos in bulk. I have, however, seen enough of them to feel that The Last Broadcast does a decent enough job of emulating their style and trappings. If I had stumbled onto this film randomly on TV one night, I could believe that it was a real, if very cheap, documentary detailing a real incident. Out of curiosity, I jumped down a rabbit hole of old internet forum reviews from the late 90s to see if many, if any, were fooled. Judging from these reviews, basically nobody was taking the bait, though we should bear in mind these comments were from those with enough knowledge of film to lurk on such websites. Most of them were just pissed off about the ending, but we'll get to that in a spoiler-free fashion soon enough.
Welcome to Fact or Fiction. Yes, we are rolling.
Within the film, a great amount of attention is placed on how digital video and the rise of the internet was changing the landscape of entertainment and the reach it could have for the small, independent guys. Suitably then, in the real world, The Last Broadcast reflects these themes perfectly. The whole movie was shot on consumer-grade cameras and equipment, and in total cost less than $1,000 to shoot.
They were all friends and family. Some had acted before. Many of them had not. Ironically, the 8mm Olympus camera that we were using worked like a champ, and we used a Sony VX1000 and a JVC single chip small camera, and they all did very well out there.
In unprecedented territory, the completed film itself was then broadcast to theatres digitally via live satellite. Deeper still, the characters who were murdered in the woods, Stephen Avcast and Lucas Wheeler, are 2 local cable filmmakers trying to make a name for themselves by making a dirt-cheap movie in the Pine Barrens. In reality, The Last Broadcast is a dirt-cheap movie filmed in the Pine Barrens, created by 2 very independent filmmakers, Stefan Avalos and Lance Wheeler.
And so we didn't really know him, and we told him when the first shoot was going to be, and then we were basically in character as Stephen Avcast and Lucas Wheeler, the 2 sort of nutty hosts.
It is fun to trace all the meta threads running through the project, which really solidifies the 90s vibes. Oh yes, it would be remiss of me to not mention the troublesome final minutes of the film, but fear not, I'll skirt around any spoilers and just show some random unrelated footage as I do so. I firmly believe the film butchered its own reputation and chances of cultural longevity with its climax. Reading those time capsule reviews, and many contemporary reviews, it appears almost everyone is in agreement here. The ending sucks. It shits the bed. It takes a perfectly good mattress, which you've been setting up in your room for an hour, sheets cleaned, pillows fluffed, but then it drenches it all in a sudden explosive burst of runny anal offshoots. That is not to say it's a bad ending in theory. On a plot level, I'm actually on board with it. In terms of how it is executed, get the fuck out of here. Was it either a really bold move, or just total amateurish incompetence? I think it's a case of attempting the former, but resulting in the latter.
And I remember when we came up with the ending, you know, that idea of that was a really exciting moment.
The same tricks could have been played out in a way that preserved the established nature of the film, and it could have been a really, really creepy ending. But no. Just like the suspected killer and his interest in magic tricks, the illusion is shattered and the magic of the film dies. The unskilled quality of the filmmakers shows itself, and many questions remain unanswered, such as, why, and what happened to the Russian? So, in the end, the last broadcast is not as good as the Blair Witch Project, but it was also a lot cheaper and had a bigger hill to climb. Perhaps you could say, the last broadcast walked through the woods, so that Blair Witch Project could run through the woods. The filmmakers are probably pissed at these constant comparisons to that other, infinitely more successful film. It seems impossible to mention the last broadcast without the other also being invited along for discussion. News media at the time tried to incite a false conflict between the two, claiming that Blair Witch was a ripoff and that Avlast and Weather were intending to sue. It was discovered pretty quickly that these claims were unfounded. Blair Witch had already been in production, and no legal action was being sought. If anything, the last broadcast guys were only hoping to sort of posthumously ride the wave of Blair Witch's success. Even so, being in that situation must be frustrating for them. It is undoubtedly the lesser of the two films, but its rightful place in the histories of independent cinema and found footage horror should not be brushed aside so lightly.